Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala hamma ba'd. This is not my actual speech that's going to be after Salat al-Maghrib. But the reason that I'm up here is a reason that I think most of you are familiar with and aware of. And it is something that we are intending to use to take al-Maghrib to the next level. You see, 10 years ago, some of us, and in particular our dear friend Muhammad Sharif, had a vision. And none of us, and I'll be the first to admit that I was guilty of this, none of us realized how far that vision would go. And here we stand 10 years, 1 decade after AlMaghrib Institute opened its doors for the very first time. And we realize that we've opened our doors to an ocean of opportunity. We've opened our doors and there are so many other things to do, so many other bars to raise higher and higher. And we can't just sit here and see those opportunities go by. Because unless and until, as our dear Imam Siraj said, unless and until we go down and get our hands dirty, we roll up our sleeves, we do something for the future of our ummah, nobody else is going to do it. And the vision that we have, and we all have our niche, we all have our little niche. And AlMaghrib Institute, its niche is Islamic education. That's what we have, that's what we're known for, and that's what, alhamdulillah, Allah has blessed us with. And if we wish to take this institute to the next level, then we need to think about taking ilm beyond weekend seminars. We are not going to produce true Islamic scholarship through weekend seminars. We will produce students of knowledge. We will produce students of knowledge. But if we genuinely want Islam to flourish in North America, if we genuinely want to pass the torch down, for this, we need something more than weekend seminars. And that vision, that ultimate vision that we have, is a full-time immersion in ilm that we as well experienced in other lands. You see, my dear brothers and sisters, as long as we continue to import our ilm from abroad, Islam will never flourish here. As long as we continue to outsource scholarship. We had to outsource once upon a time. There was no other alternative. And we thank Allah for the sacrifices of that generation. In the beginning, you have to outsource. But eventually, you have to hire local talents. You have to start building, even from a purely economic point. You need to start hiring locals. If you keep on sending your money abroad, your talent abroad, what's going to happen to your own company and your own nation? And never has Islam flourished in a land except that there were local indigenous scholars who led the change and who led that torch to the next generation. And never has Islam faltered, never has Islam dwindled, except that we find that there was no scholarship to pass that religion down. And I give you 2 examples from our own world that we live in. 2 living countries, 2 examples that some of us have visited. I have only visited one of these 2 lands, but I have friends from both of them. And these 2 examples are South America and South Africa. And by South America, I mean Argentina, Brazil, a number of countries, and South Africa. At the turn of the century, both of these lands experienced large batches of Muslim immigrants for the first time in their histories. Large batches of Muslim immigrants. People came from the Ottoman empires to South America. From what is now Syria and these lands, they came to South America. And people came from India, because the British obviously were in charge of India and they were also in charge of South America and South Africa. And they wanted to import a group of educated people to act as clerics, as secretaries, as indentured servants. So they imported tens of thousands of Indians, and of course Indians, as we know, have a huge percentage of Muslims. So around 100 years ago, large batches of Muslims came to South America, and large batches came to South Africa. Now, 100 years later, if you go to South America, I have not been blessed to give da'wah in South America, I haven't been there yet, but I have plenty of friends and I have heard this firsthand from many people. You will find that the people who immigrated to those lands, the Muslims, by and large, their descendants have left Islam. Their masajids are empty. The impact that they had was completely negligible. And there is no greater indication for this than that the previous president of Argentina, or by now I think it's two presidents ago, the president of Argentina, his great-grandfather was a Syrian Muslim who immigrated for opportunity, for a land, for whatnot, but they didn't keep that tradition down. And he was of Arab blood, of Muslim background and heritage, but when politics called, he felt no need to protect a faith that was not protected for him by his own parents. And he readily renounced his religion when he was a teenager, as soon as he entered politics, until finally he entered and he became the president of Argentina. Now, contrast this to South Africa. And I have visited South Africa. I've been given da'wah in South Africa. South Africa is worlds apart. Anybody who's been to South Africa is simply astonished at the Islamic presence. You see Muslims flourishing. You see, mashallah, tabarakallah, Muslims everywhere, in the businesses. Somebody told me that in the city of Johannesburg, all of the chicken there is halal because the Muslims are the one running the businesses. All of the chicken you buy will be halal. Even though the Muslims are less than, 3-4%? They're not like 20-30%. They're a small minority, right? I went to the department stores. Looks just like an American department store. But 1 out of every 4 or 5 is, mashallah, a bearded, thawbs, a hijabi. You see the presence of Islam. And I met, when I was in South Africa, I met one of the eldest ladies that was still, mashallah, tabarakallah, an activist, a speaker and whatnot. She was 93 years old. She was 93 years old. And she was born in South Africa. Her father was the one who immigrated. 93 years old. And this itself was, I think, 4 years ago I went to South Africa. So I asked her point blank, what is the cause of your success? I said, I'm astonished. We don't see this type of Islam even in America. And you people have lost the language. They came from Gujarat and they don't speak the language anymore, right? You've lost the heritage. You don't know which land you came from. You don't know which village you came from. By the way, to preserve the spices, alhamdulillah. The food, spices was there, right? But they lost everything else. But their Islam, mashallah, tabarakallah, was flourishing. So I asked her, what is the secret of the success of Islam in South Africa? Instantaneously, you know what she told me? 93-year-old lady, sharp, very intelligent. She said, the madrasas. She said, the madrasas. When I was a young girl, my father would send us to the madrasa. I said, you're a young lady, you're a girl, and in our culture, Indian Pakistani culture, girls don't go to the madrasas. And I'm positive that your father, when he grew up in India, he had never heard of a girl going to a madrasa. And she said, yes, but he realized that that's our only way to preserve Islam. Even now, that's what you call foresightedness. That is what you call thinking outside of the box. In his own culture, to this day in our land, women don't go to the masjid, as we know. Women don't go to madrasas. To this day, they're still that narrow-minded. But this lady's father, when he came to South Africa, he realized we got to change. And we have to teach our children the religion. And South Africa is the only Western country in the world that produces qurra, reciters of the Quran, that are capable of participating in and winning international Quran competitions. The only Western country in the world that has madrasas that rival many of the madrasas and Islamic seminaries in other places around the world. Why and how? Because not too long ago, it was only 100 years ago, less than 100. I mean, realistically, the actual madrasas probably started 80 years ago, right? But they realized they needed to preserve their legacy for their children. And we here at AlMaghrib Institute, we realize the same thing. That if we genuinely want this religion to flourish in this land, we want to pass this heritage down, then we need to produce not 1, not 10, not 13 graduates as we have, but mashallah, tabarakallah, thousands and thousands. And those thousands and thousands, we need to make them to a level where they can become imams, a'immas, du'ats, muftis. They can go into a society and a community and change it upside down. Because that's what knowledge does, as we all have known and studied. That's exactly what knowledge does. Who remembers the politicians of 100, 1,000, 200 years ago? Who remembers the names of the vice presidents and the khalifas, even the khalifas? Who remembers the wazirs? But we all know the name of Ibn Taymiyyah. We all know the name of Ahmad bin Hanbal. We don't know the name of the Khalifa who persecuted him, unless you're a historian. We don't know the name of the Khalifa whom Ibn Taymiyyah had a number of altercations with. We have people don't remember that. But what do we remember? The people who carried the torch of knowledge from one generation to the next. And what we intend to do is to plug in that knowledge to the universal outlets of Islam. And in order to do that, we're going to have to move beyond weekend seminars. And it's not going to be an easy thing, especially in this land. It's not like in other lands. And that is why we have opened up a waqf, an endowment that has been running for less than a year. But mashallah, tabarakallah, the enthusiasm that we have seen from our students has overwhelmed us. And I used to say when we opened up the endowment, it's going to take over 10 years. But looking at the enthusiasm, wallahi, I think even half of that or even less, and Allah knows how long it's going to take. But we have learned from the mistakes of others. We're not eager to open up a full-time seminary, which is our ultimate vision and goal, until we're confident that the seminary will flourish. The last thing we want to do is want to be hasty about something that is so important for the future of the ummah. We will not compromise on the quality of education. We will not compromise on what we're going to teach. Nobody will dictate to us, you can and you cannot teach that. But what we will promise you, insha'Allah ta'ala, is that with the help of Allah and then all of your help, it is our job, it is our vision, it is our goal to make sure that this heritage flourishes in this land of ours. We want to produce scholars that have been born and raised here, that don't need to go overseas except to debate and interact with other scholars. We want to produce local qurra here in America. We want to produce experts of hadith that know how to look up the books. We want to produce fuqaha, mujtahidun, and that's not going to happen in weekend seminars. It can only happen when people are immersed in a culture of knowledge 24/7, as we ourselves, Allah blessed us to be immersed in that. For 7, 8, 10 years we were immersed in that culture. And that gave us just a little bit of taste. And the reality is, even that immersion is a stepping stone. But it has to be done. And for this reason, we ask, especially you, our graduates, and the families of our graduates, especially you, our core students, and also all of you who are watching online, and all of you who will watch these videos from days and years ahead to come. We ask all of you, if you truly believe in this vision, and you share the goal that we share, that you share the khair. And that's the name of our website, www.sharethekhair.com. You share the khair by helping us to have this endowment, this waqf. And I've said this many times, you all know this from me, the very concept of a waqf is something that is uniquely Islamic. No civilization before Islam had something called a waqf. What is a waqf? A waqf is property or money that is not owned by anybody. Who could have thought of this concept? Think about it. You have a land, you have a factory that's producing something, you have a date grove, you have an amount of money that's invested. Who owns it? No one person. That's the whole point. The beauty of the waqf, it makes institutions independent of the whims of donors, of the political prejudices, the social prejudices, the religious prejudices of those who give the money. We all know one of the biggest problems of our masajid is that the ones who give the money are not the ones who are the most qualified to dictate what the masjid should do. So our imams, our du'ats, they feel second class. They feel stifled. We, as alhamdulillah, we have shown at AlMaghrib Institute, we are not stifled. And we speak the truth, insha'Allah, and we fear not the critic of those who criticize. We fear not the criticisms of those who criticize. And in order to maintain that independence, we need this waqf to flourish. And this waqf, the goal of the waqf is very simple and is very clear. And it's a public waqf. Anybody can log on and check what we are doing with it. The goal of the waqf, of course, we all know, the waqf itself, the money will not be touched. It's permanent. It's an endowment that is permanent. The goal of the waqf is threefold. First and foremost, to raise the bar of professionalism of our classes. There's a lot to be done. Training needs to be done. The student atmosphere, alhamdulillah, from where we started 10 years ago, things have changed immensely. And we need to make sure that we're keeping up with the times. The second part of the waqf is financial aid and scholarships. And I say this as frankly as possible, that it hurts me every time I teach a class to see empty seats in the class. It hurts me personally. I don't want anybody to be turned down because of a lack of financial aid. And one of the goals of this waqf is to make sure that financial aid is available to all of those who need it. And the third, and perhaps the ultimate goal of the waqf, but I put it number 3 because chronologically it will be the last. It's not going to be the first. The third goal of the waqf is to open up a full-time seminary where students of knowledge, men and women, because we're very firm about this, like the 93-year-old lady told me, you can't deprive half of the society from Islamic knowledge. You can't deprive the mothers of the future generations of knowledge. Men and women, brothers and sisters will come and they will immerse themselves 24/7 as we also immersed ourselves. Because that immersion is necessary not just for the knowledge, for the tarbiyah, for the spirituality, for that one-on-one interactions, for that reading the Quran that you really just can't do sitting at home. You need to recite, you need that interaction, you need to see. And you all hear these legendary stories of myself and Shaykh Yasir Burgess and Shaykh Khalid Basuni and others that we have of, Shaykh ibn Uthaymeen, Shaykh bin Baz, whatnot. Wallahi, we did not study with them as much as we studied with our university professors. Yet the impact they had on us was 1,000, 1,000,000 times more than our university professors. Why? Because of their characteristics and manners. Because of their genuine akhlaq, their humility, their sincerity. And the impact that these people had, we are not qualified to even walk in their shoes. We're not even qualified to walk behind them. But unfortunately, we feel compelled to get to that level even if we're not qualified to. We feel that there's got to be some type of immersion. For those who cannot go, there must be something over here. And so for this, we've opened up the endowment, we've opened up the waqf, and I conclude by reminding you of a famous hadith that we've heard for years and years, and that is when a person dies, all of his actions come to an end except for 3. We all know. What are these? Number 1 is sadaqah jariyah. Number 2 is knowledge that people benefit from. And number 3 is righteous children that pray for him. Guess what, brothers and sisters? This waqf, for sure, it takes care of 2 out of 3, and inshallah, it'll take care of 3 out of 3 if you send your own kids to AlMaghrib seminary. It takes care of 2 out of 3 for sure. Why? Because it combines ilmun yuntafa'u bih, right? Sadaqah jariyah, ilmun yuntafa'u bih. These are combined because this waqf is sadaqah jariyah. And it is knowledge that people will benefit from. And then inshallah, as you grow older, your children will come to AlMaghrib seminary, inshallah. So it'll combine all 3 of these things. I can't think of a better endowment than this. And especially you, our graduating class, we expect you, with the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and after the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to help us out. So please, take a moment of your times now to look at the back of your brochures and your forms and fill out whatever you can. We're not going to have a fundraiser like who's going to give this. No, it's between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But frankly, especially for those who are here, I think it is fair to ask every one of you to fill that form out with whatever you can afford. Even if it's $10, $20 a month. By the way, we want the regulars. We don't want that one-time enthusiasm of 500. No. Even if you give $20 a month regularly, this is more precious to us than you give a one-time of 500 or something. Unless the one-time is $1 million, in which case, speak to me. But otherwise, we want the regular donors because, as our Prophet ﷺ said, أَحَبُّ الْأَعْمَالِ إِلَى اللَّهِ أَدْوَمُهَا وَإِنْ قَلْ. The most beloved of all these in the eyesight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is that which is the most persistent, even if it is something that is small. So I will pause here and I will give time for you to fill out the form.